So most of our filmmakers actually don't even want to think beyond the borders of the Indian, well, I'd say Indians wherever they might live, because there's a very, very, very large diaspora. So Indian cinema does show all over the world, but yeah, they're interested in that audience. And whether it's Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Bengali, there's audiences for all of us, Bhojpuri, and they're all doing, the good ones of course, they're all doing very well and they're very successful. So now the issue of those few of us who dream of our films showing beyond our diaspora and beyond India, our borders and our diaspora. And this session is really devoted to that, and everybody on the stage has some dream, desire, or part to play in that process. In a very ungentlemanly fashion, let me say Farrukh because he's been around the longest in all of us. I mean, he's moved out of India in the 60s and has lived in England and been commissioning editor for international content for the British market. Not for Indians, but for all Brits in England. Lucy's work is amazing. It's been in this part of the world, and the one thing she has specifically is sheer perseverance, I think, and to create great stuff. Vani's done film, acting, and theatre has a way of traveling. Anna and I have just been working on a documentary on flamenco, Bharatanatyam, and Kathakali. We believe it's a story that will travel. It's a co-production between India, Spain, and Saudi Arabia. So it has a very wide interest that we have. Tannishtha's roles have been in a variety of films. I think I first met Tannishtha a very long time ago when she was part of a girl band. And I've seen all the films. We are now working together, and she's directed a film called Rome, Rome May, which is both the Rome in Italy and the Rome inside us, you know, and which was designed definitely for a world market. So all of us are here, and I'm not going to say much more other than the fact that I believe that there are elements about stories. The stories are all the same. All of us like love, romance, etc. But there's some specific stories that I believe will always have an international appeal. So that's the content. And then there is also the form. So how you tell them. Because if you tell them dancing around trees, etc., or you know, two birds pecking every time a couple wants to kiss, then that's pure Indian cinema. And then you've got very bold films made out of India also that do travel, and I've seen the worldwide in so many ways. And one of our colleagues who's passed away, Nirmal Pandey, who played a lead in The Bandit Queen, once played a transgender in a film called Darmiyan. The film didn't have enough money to make the cast travel all over. So it was in a film festival in Paris, and nobody knew who this guy was. They didn't even know he was a guy. So the festival gave him the Best Actress award. And we were all shocked to see that the guy received the Best Actress award. They didn't know better. So if it's things like displacement, romance, very close relationships, issues that affect very tight family units, when transposed, everybody understands them. One of my favorites has been Meera Nair's Monsoon Wedding. Whether it's child abuse, whether it's financial trouble during marriages, whether it's a class difference in relationships, it deals with all of it in a very mature way. And as a result, the film traveled very well. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to now first go to Lucy, and she's going to tell us what she believes worked for her and what she expects of her movies.
Hello, hello. So wonderful to be here. Thank you so much to everybody, and what a fantastic conversation. Well, my mind is buzzing with lots of things, so a few assorted thoughts perhaps. I've been lucky enough to make documentary films in my career, and I'm from London in the UK originally, but I've made stories, I've made film documentaries with quite specific stories in Brazil, in Japan, in USA, in so many different places. In Nepal, my most recent film, Mountain Queen, is about a female Sherpa climber, Lakpa Sherpa, who grew up in Nepal and now lives in the US. And that's on Netflix. And that's actually an interesting example because Netflix bought the film after we made it and has distributed it all around the world, including it was actually their very first Netflix film they ever subtitled into Nepali, which I was really proud that we were kind of breaking those barriers so that it could be seen in Lakpa's home country. And in the specific world of documentary films, actually, I have so many incredible Indian filmmaker friends, and you know, the last 2 years there have been Indian films nominated for the Oscar in the Best Documentary Feature category, which is kind of the cream of the documentary awards. And the last 2 years in particular, Indian filmmakers have been that, and I think it's exciting that the incredibly, you know, talent pool of Indian filmmaking and Indian diaspora filmmakers have been turning their attention to these documentary stories because there are so many stories and so much filmmaking talent, and the world of documentary, I think, has been really embracing these kinds of stories. And I always think, and perhaps others on the panel would have this view, I always think, first of all, with story about a really good beginning, middle, and end, and people that you care about, you know, creatures that you care about, stories that you want to follow because you want to follow the people and find out what's going to happen. And so when I make a film, I always have a question that I have to drop everything to find out what's going to happen. Will they be able to climb the mountain? Will their dream come true? Will they be okay if they're in danger? You know, these kinds of big burning questions that will take you in. And then I also think about the world. I've always been very curious about the world, and I think as a girl growing up in London, I was just, I didn't have enough money myself to travel the world, and I also didn't think that being on vacation was the most interesting way to see the world. I thought that to meet people and learn about the world, I wanted to travel and work with people and really understand what it was like. And so I feel like I've designed a job making documentary films where I really get to explore the world and tell those stories. So I've been so grateful.
Thanks. You have actually said the magic word, beginning, middle, and end. I mean, everybody sees a film, firstly to know what's going to happen next. Then comes the art, then comes the emotion, but the first one starts. So, Vani, you've done theatre and you've explored subjects that have especially originated in different parts of the world and been transferred to India. So tell us a little bit about your journey in this space.
Thank you, Bobby sir. And Lucy, I just happened to finish Mountain Queen just before I came away to the festival. She actually won the biggest prize 3 days ago at New York at one of the biggest film festivals there for being the best foreign language film, and so congratulations. We are the first one to congratulate you post the award because you were on a long flight. There is a very old and a very beautiful saying in Sanskrit called Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, which means all world is a family. And I think what more than content creation to actually describe this in toto. We are living in a land of storytellers. Every nook and corner of India is storytelling, or as we say in Hindi, kathavachan. You know, we have stories about music, about people, about food, about customs, about language, about many, many things which are intrinsic to our own life. But we also tell stories which come from outside. In the theatre, I remember whether it was Anton Chekhov, Three Sisters that I did on stage, or Tennessee Williams or Arthur Miller or Peter Sheffer, they were all translated into our own language, Hindi and Hindustani, and we traveled the world to a world where language was not an issue. For example, one of the other things I often wonder about is, what does a foreign language category mean? Why today we are language agnostic and stories communicate? I mean, if this is Nepalese, the whole world saw the story of Lakma Sherpa and what happened in Nepal, the very country which is known for the summit of the Everest. So I think eventually stories travel when they have a universality to it, but they also travel when they have a cultural connect. Few weeks ago we were in Spain and we were a part of a screenwriters lab. Bobby sir was kind enough to pick little people like me to take to that mentorship lab. But when I look at Spain and India, for example, the cultural connect is so intrinsic, whether it's the values, the way we are brought up, or how important eating together is as a culture. So I think the whole concept of stories not being intrinsic to a geological boundary. We often hear the word cinema without boundaries or theatre without boundaries. I think stories are actually those things which have no boundaries. They are the ones who reach out to each other for the love, the emotion, the grief, the sadness, and many, many emotions like the navrasas of life, 9 different emotions. They can be in any language, they can be in any country, but it will be the language of that universality which speaks to each other, whether the form is theatre, or it is cinema, or it is pure writing. I think it's sheer gold.
Thanks. Farrukh, you've been writing stuff for cinema, and more importantly, you've been writing a lot of novels that sell all over the world. You've done translations of Rumi. I mean, it's a very wide audience that you have. What is it that you believe actually is universal about writing?
Hi.
Yeah.
Vani said the old Sanskrit saying says we are all humanity is one family. I'd rather not belong to the same family as Trump or Netanyahu. But it's true that every culture, every nation, every tribe has its own mythologies. That's where stories start. In India, we have the Ramayana, we have the Mahabharata, and we have stories like the Panchatantra. They're all mythological stories of the ancient times. In Greece, of course, they have the Iliad and the Odyssey. And the mythologies tell us about ethics, about adventure, and about the potential drama between human beings. Now, those were old myths, and every culture has them, but some of them haven't traveled, some of them have because they are very particular, some of them have because they are not very particular to the culture that they are bred from. Then, of course, one has the modern myth. Consider the stories that have traveled from India. The modern myth maker, I think, the best modern myth maker, shall we say, in independent India was Raj Kapoor. And Gandhi, Nehru, the rest of them, they achieved independence. We are an independent India. But Raj Kapoor asked himself, who is independent India? Who the hell are we as Indians? And he made a modern myth. And the modern myth was that होठों पे सच्चाई होती है, दिल में सफाई होती है, हम उस देश के वासी हैं जिस देश में गंगा बहती है. Okay, so there's a religious illusion, but it's an illusion and an illusion, because as we know, the Indian country, होठों पे सच्चाई हमेशा नहीं रहती है, और दिल में सफाई हमेशा नहीं रहती है. His geography was correct. हम उस देश के वासी हैं जिस देश में गंगा बहती है. So geographically he was okay, right? But his films were about how the peasantry, how the poor in the urban fought for an existence, fought for an advancement. The villains are always guys with ties and suits, right? And his heroes are Mera Naam Raju, Gherana Naam, Behtiya Ganga Jahan Mera Gaam, you know, a boatman, and a poor boatman. And people identify with that. Now, his films became international in a sense. They traveled, but they didn't travel to America or Europe. He got the most fame in what they call the Soviet Union, and he won prizes there. But he didn't win prizes in St. Petersburg or Moscow. He won prizes in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Turkestan, and so on, who could identify that peasantry under the Soviet Union, could identify with exactly he was saying to the Indian population. And the modern myth of India became welcome in the countries, the poorer countries of the Soviet Union. That was, of course, one of the first transferences. The second transference from India of stories that traveled was, shall we say, the artistic films of Chatterjee, which went then to universally, they won prizes in Cannes. They might not have been completely popular in, say, New York or San Francisco, but they did win prizes and they did see the value of it. And the fact of it is that from mythology, the Europeans first converted novels, converted literature devoid of the gods to try and tell the truth. Anna Karenina, Madame Bovary, Jane Austen, George Eliot, Henry James, they converted, they said, no God, let's see what's actually going on between us. So mythology turned to novels, and of course, the primary state that picked up the novels were the Bengalis. And Satyajit, and they took the Bengali novelistic tradition and turned it into a traveling story, and it went there. And the third phase of travels from India were stories that turned modern reality that could be appreciated anywhere in the world. So think of a film like Slumdog Millionaire, a person who's born in a slum and advances into becoming a millionaire through a modern rubbish television quiz, for God's sake, which makes money. Think of a film like Salam Bombay, which of course went to Cannes, which I incidentally commissioned and edited. It went to Cannes, it went to the Oscars, and it went there because, again, it was the story of poor people in Bombay and in Mumbai, making it in some significant dramatic way. Think of something like Monsoon Wedding, 3 love stories which come together, unlikely love stories, but they come together and they conquer the obstacles to love. So, amor vincit omnia, love conquers all. And of course, every human being would understand that. So Salam Bombay also goes there. The film that we wrote together, Bobby Shaker directed it, I wrote the script, was Bandit Queen. Again, that appealed to a very particular rise in the politics of the world. And that is the rise of a low-caste woman fighting for her rights, and doesn't matter what kind of laws she violates by murdering people, as long as she fights for her rights. And I think women all over the world recognized exactly that. And that was what made that film universal. I am sure there'll be others, and I'm sure people in this audience will write to them. Thank you.
Thank you.